Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about evictions and the process behind it. An eviction is a legal process of removing a person, especially a tenant, from land or building. Everyone who may be involved in this process should research the applicable laws in your state or province. We're going to be looking at the reasons someone may be evicted, the steps in the process, the forms you will need to complete, and where to file those forms. If you are the owner or landlord of a property and are for an eviction, you are the applicant. The tenant who is being asked to leave is the respondent. In Ontario, the Landlord Tenant Board resides over eviction hearings. There are different reasons a landlord can apply to the board to evict a tenant. They must first give the tenant a notice of termination that tells the tenant what the problem is. Let's look at a common reason to evict a tenant: failure to pay rent. The rent is late if the full amount is not paid by midnight on the day it is due. The landlord can ask a tenant to move or pay the money they owe. The landlord must give notice in writing in a form called a Notice to End a Tenancy Early for Non-Payment of Rent, also known as an N4. Once the landlord has given the tenant notice, if the tenant does not pay or move in response to the notice, the landlord can apply to the board for an order to evict and collect the rent that the tenant owes. A notice to end a tenancy early for non-payment of rent tells the tenant how much rent the landlord believes that the tenant owes, the date that the landlord wants the tenant to pay the overdue rent by, that if the tenant does not pay the rent or move by the termination date in the notice, the landlord can apply to the board to evict the tenant. If the tenant does not pay, the landlord must apply using the proper form. It is called an application to evict a tenant for non-payment of rent and to collect the rent the tenant owes. If the landlord files an application with the board, a hearing will be scheduled. The landlord or someone acting on behalf of the landlord must give the tenant a copy of the application and the notice of the hearing. These documents must be given to the tenant at least 10 days before the hearing. A member of the board is the person in charge. The member will listen to both parties and make a decision about the application. Make sure to arrive a half hour early to sign in at the record of attendance. In triplicate, have all your supporting documents ready along with your file number. You and the tenant will be called before the member and each will have a chance to present their side of things. In most cases, the board will give their decision to you afterwards, or you may have to wait for their judgment in the mail. Each step of the eviction process is time sensitive. All your information must be correct, or you could be asked to start the process all over again. If you're inexperienced with the process, you may wish to hire a property manager or legal representative. For more questions or information about the eviction process, you can contact your local Landlord Tenant Board.